and I would recommend having a go at it if you like Left 4 Dead. I wonder if there's still much of an audience there for that kind of game.
Well, it's one of the most talked about games, I think, still. I mean, loads of the gaming groups I am part of on online, they still bring up Left 4 Dead. I know that it's still a popular one to stream on Twitch and things like that. So it does make sense to have just an update kind of pseudo sequel to it. My question to you, Travis, is would you be willing to sacrifice this game to the trauma of me trying it? This is an online game. If I killed this, if my curse continues, would you be okay with me killing this game?
You didn't kill World War Z. They're still putting updates out for that.
I only played that for like a couple of hours.
You played it for longer than a couple of hours. Be fair. You played that for a couple of weeks. On and off.
On and off, yeah. So, okay.
But the trial's finished, so you're gonna have to wait a while until the actual game comes out proper. I probably imagine before you can do anything else. The only other thing I would say is I've heard it's a full price game, so I've heard it's Australia tax included, $80-$90 game. So based on what I saw this weekend, while I had fun with it, if it wasn't on Game Pass, I wouldn't bother with it at that price.
Okay.
I just don't think it would want a lot more. Even if it had everything that Left 4 Dead had included in it, the campaign and the multiplayer, that's not $80-$90 game for me. So that's another thing to keep into the mix. But the thing is did you ever play Left 4 Dead?
I don't think I did, no.
They are so much more fun playing with friends.
Okay.
Playing with randos, most multiplayer games you probably know. We aren't multiplayer fans, but playing with randos makes them that much worse.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, well, maybe when it releases, we could try jumping on and playing and maybe streaming some, and people can see just how bad at games I am.
We are, especially at shooters.
Yeah, that'll. Can you just imagine if we both played on like Fortnite and somehow we were the last two? We just wouldn't be able to hit each other.
It'd be like in PUBG or something, right? There, just feel like we'd just be hiding for an hour.
They've been going for ages because they've both run out of ammo and there's no more spawning in the game.
Attacking you with a frying pan or something. No, hitting in the face. They're hitting in the face.
Hey, that hurts.
But yeah, it was a nice flashback. I wonder if the game they followed up with was a game called Evolve. I don't know if you remember Evolve. It was a monster hunting game. It was a co-op monster hunting game where you got to be a monster.
4-on-1.
Yeah, and that didn't go well. So yeah, we'll see.
That was my fault. I played that one. I killed it.
And so did my ex-wife, who also, but she loved it. She didn't.
I played with her for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and that game's still in it. They got a lot of dust in this box pretty quickly.
Yeah. Hey, it's at least it's not as bad as that one that came out at the same time as Overwatch that I played.
Bloodborne? Was it Bloodborne? No, Battleborn.
Yes, Bloodborne. Yeah, no, not Bloodborne. That's a PlayStation 5 game. Battleborn, yes. That one died almost as soon as it came out.
It was you certainly backed the right horse on that one.
Yep.
No one on it after a week.
Yep. Why does it take so long to play the game?
Gearbox also backed the wrong horse on that one too.
Yeah, that's true. They've been making a few bad choices recently. But anyway. Yeah, Travis, I want to hear your thoughts, if you're able, on Gunpowder Milkshake.
Yeah, so I watched this on the weekend. So those who aren't familiar with it, it's basically John Wick with a gender bent cast, gender reverse cast. It's basically a female John Wick. And I might be getting shouted down for saying that. But that's kind of what the trailers made it look like. And that's kind of what it was. 3 generations of women fight back against those who take everything from them. Stars Karen Gillan as Sam, who is our protagonist. Lena Headey as Scarlett, her mother. We also have Carla Gugino in there, Michelle Yeoh, Paul Giamatti's in here as well. And essentially, Sam is an assassin. She does jobs for the firm, who are like a giant crime cabal. Who her contact is Paul Giamatti, who gives her jobs. We see a little bit of Sam's backstory. She was abandoned in a diner by her mother, who was being hunted by other assassins or something. And mother was like, "Oh, I've got to leave you here for some reason," and we don't really ever fully see why. So, Sam kind of has that trauma of having her being abandoned by her mother, and has taken up the same occupation as her mother, being an assassin. For a job, she's given a job to retrieve some money from someone who has stolen it from the firm. And she finds out the person who stole the money has done so because his daughter has been taken hostage by criminals. And the money was to pay her ransom. And because Sam is a nice person who has a conscience, she decides she can't just abandon the kid. And hence needs to take the money and try to retrieve the kid from the kidnappers, which she does. In the process of which, loses the money. Now the firm's after her, and hijinks ensue. With lots of shooting and fairly unconvincing fight scenes.
Does the trailer kind of makes it look like John Wick meets shoot 'em up?
Yeah, there's definitely a shoot 'em up vibe to it as well.
Yeah,
it's not that bad though. It's very highly stylized. I mean, so the diner where her mother abandons her comes back again and again. It's like a regular haunt, but it's a bit like the Intercontinental in John Wick, where where it's a truce zone almost, where there's no guns allowed into a diner kind of thing, and it has a very 50s aesthetic. The diner, and in one scene's in the bowling alley, which is a very 50s aesthetic. So, and the another sort of facsimile of the Intercontinental is a library of which is run by the librarians Carla Gugino, Michelle Yeoh, and Joanna Bobbin, who kind of nicely actually all wear similar outfit colors to the fairy godmothers from the Disney Cinderella films. And the books all have guns in them. Like, oh, you need to read Jane Eyre, and it has a pistol.
Okay.
And so you're like, yeah, okay, it's all right. It's an interesting idea. I think in the last John Wick film, there was a fight in a library, if I'm not mistaken. If I remember correctly, he dealt someone with a book in that film. It's okay. It's just, there's a little girl in here as well. A little girl, she does rescue a little girl. So she sort of becomes her surrogate daughter, So, we have the 3 generations of women fighting against where I think it falls down for me is a few things. Lena Headey is possibly one of the worst actresses working in the Hollywood theater, I think, going around. I think everyone on Game of Thrones is a terrible actor. I apart from Sean Bean, I have never, you remember that thing we would do where I'd be like, who's this guy who's starring in this movie I've never heard of before? I'm like, oh, he's from Game of Thrones. They're without exception, they are terrible actresses. Emilia Clarke, terrible. Lena Headey, terrible. The guy who plays Jon Snow, terrible. They're terrible actors. So they're just lucky they landed a good TV show.
Peter Dinklage, good actor.
Dinklage being a notable exception. She also doesn't look old enough to be Karen Gillan's mother, because she's only 10 years older. So
I'm scratching my head on that one. Yeah.
So that was okay, and that was. But the main problem, I think, is the action. It's not very good. Not all of it's terrible. A couple of scenes you're like, oh, that's an interesting scene. So in one particular scene, Karen Gillan has her arms paralyzed, and has to then go and fight some goons without the use of her arms, which is done in a fairly interesting and creative way.
Mm-hmm.
But these goons are also kind of crippled as well because she already beat the shit out of them. So, like, they've got broken legs and they've got broken arms and are on crutches and shit. So that kind of scene kind of worked. But I just find it struggle with like scenes where you have a woman the size of Karen Gillan, who's she's a fine actress, is a small woman, and she's beating the shit out of giant men, who all attack her one at a time.
Because they're gentlemen.
They're gentlemen. So, and like a lot of the fight scenes they lack the impact that John Wick had or nobody had. I'm not a massive John Wick fan. I like the first two. I didn't like the third one at all. But those fight scenes feel like they had impact. Like the amount of times, like I kind of rate the quality of a John Wick film. The amount of times you go, "Ooh, that looked like it hurt." And there was maybe one or two moments like that in the entirety of Gunpowder Milkshake, and very, very few other moments where it just felt like the combat had impact. I've always kind of felt like a video game where the bodies you're maybe a shooter where the bodies of the enemies just disappear as soon as they hit the ground. Like, you kind of don't feel like you're actually accomplishing. You might have just killed 100 goons, but because their bodies disappear so quickly, the room doesn't look any different. So it lacked impact for me for the action scenes. So I was disappointed about it. Sorry, how bad of me. Angela Bassett was one of the librarians. I forgot her. She was in this, and she's wow. It's good to see Angela Bassett again after seeing her in Strange Days the other week. She was really good in that, and she's good in this. So it's insubstantial, I guess. It is a bit like a milkshake, right? Like it might taste okay going down, but by the time it's done, you're kind of like that wasn't very much. Probably it's a lukewarm milkshake from the Hoyt's La Premiere with one scoop of ice cream and, a lukewarm hot dog on a supermarket roll. It looks good on the menu and you've had good milkshakes and hot dogs before, but this will not go down as one of them,
That's a big shame because I remember the trailer coming out and they had a big Instagram kind of pre-release story about the production of this, and they were really saying that this was kind of a showcase for action women and really pushing that kind of legacy of like Michelle Yeoh. She's a legend of Asian cinema and Western cinema now as well. She's been in more than enough to warrant that. But she's always delivered these fantastic fight sequences in her past movies. Carla Gugino, Lena Headey, they've always had these roles of hard-ass women. And even Karen Gillan, whilst pretty new on the scene, so to speak, she's generally been like a fighter, like being Nebula in the MCU, and she's often kind of portrayed as that kind of like wiry fighter. And so having a movie where the action really lets it down and everything else sounds like it's quite paint by numbers, that's very disappointing.
Not quite paint by numbers. Like I said, the aesthetic is different. The aesthetic is originally different and interesting, and it looks good. It really looks good apart from the fight scenes. I don't know if the good fight coordinators were out to lunch that week, or they just the stars here couldn't adapt to when. I mean, I don't know. For example, Michelle Yeoh wasn't given a lot of combat to give. She was given some, but not a lot of hand-to-hand combat. The kind of thing she's famous for is you sort of, you think Michelle Yeoh, you think Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. For example, or she was in the James Bond film, I think, from memory. So, but she had a lot of her combat was with firearms in this film. It seemed more of a firearms combat related one a lot of the time, and you're like, okay, but most of the rest of the cast didn't seem as comfortable with it as you might expect. I mean, for a film that was hyping itself as action women, They're all fine. They do as well. I think they all do the best they can with the content. And it's not, by no means am I saying this is bad. It's fine. It's fine. It's the kind of film you'd watch on an airplane and probably be distracted for, what is it, an hour and a half, 2 hours. Hour 54. It's too long. Needed 20 minutes sliced out of it, as usual. But, and then you would get off a plane and you would never remember it again. You'd be in a video store. You'd be on the video store. You'd be on Netflix a year later and you'd be like, have you guys saw that film once? Yeah. And, it was, it just didn't live up to, it was not equal to the sum of its parts. It just, honestly, in the end, it felt like a lazy, hackneyed ripoff of, I'm saying it's not bad, but it felt like a lazy, hackneyed ripoff of significantly better action films. Now, there are people I know, like people who watch this film with, who I shall not mention, his name rhymes with Rochelle, who might say, that mediocre film. We need to let women make more mediocre films to sort of really start to give these people an opportunity to make these type of films. I should note this was written and directed by men, but stars women. I don't know. I feel like there's a better material. I go back again to it. I know it's like she will say that, but women deserve to make mediocre films, so people get used to seeing them in these type of roles, and that women get experience in doing these type of roles, and young girls can go to the movies, or in this case, turn on Netflix, and get used to seeing women being ass kickers like this. And to that, I will continue to say, yes, I agree with that, but they deserve better material than this. They deserve better material than ripped off John Wick clones. Someone out there could come up with something original. I mean, I guess it's harder to make something original if you can go to the executives and go, it's like John Wick, but it's got women in it, it'll be just like Ghostbusters, except good. So I don't know, but like I would prefer to see something original, and maybe something original would be more compelling than this.
Yeah, no, I think that's very fair, because yes, it is very important to allow the marginalized sexes, genders, all of that to actually get out there and be seen by more people. That doesn't mean that they should have to do it just to get that out there. It should be, well, if we're going to do it, let's do it well. Let's really get something good. Let's push it as far as we possibly can. And I think that there are a lot of movies coming out where it's just incidental rather than let's actually make something worthwhile. But it's always nice to see. Like I'm a fan of Karen Gillan. I love seeing her and stuff. I think she's a great actress. I think she's got a lot of potential, and it's good to see her in action roles. But I feel like from the way that you've kind of sold this, kind of sounds like the action stuff that she does in Guardians of the Galaxy is better.
Yeah, and it really felt like, I mean, obviously, she doesn't, I mean, it was good to see Karen Gillan because she's, as Nebula, doesn't get, the epic kind of screen time that even any of the other characters do, really. She is a fairly minor character. And she doesn't really get to show what she can do. So it is nice to see Karen Gillan get an entire film to herself to show us what she can do. And as I said, I think she did the best she could with the material. This is not a knock on Karen Gillan at all. The only knock here is on Lena Headey, who's a terrible actress. But I just think it was it felt like a lazy retread of something that's been done significantly better elsewhere. So, despite the fact that, maybe it's a good thing to see mediocre, schlocky action films coming out with women in them, I'm still going to say, as mediocre, schlocky action films go, this is particularly mediocre. This is the toast sandwich of the John Wick clones,
Toast sandwich. That
look it up. Wow. Look it up. I didn't make that up. It's a thing, and yet again, it comes from Great Britain. You don't know.
I have distanced myself a lot from Great Britain. Thank you very much, and I'm proud of the fact that I don't know about English culture.
Colonialism, cricket, and the toast sandwich. That's what we got.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that, really.
That's about it, really. That's about all they had to offer the world. Colonialism, cricket, and the toast sandwich. But it's not. I believe Gunpowder Milkshake's available on Netflix overseas.
Okay.
I think it's a Netflix film. It is definitely a Netflix film because it had their shit to start. In Australia, it is showing at cinemas if you are lucky enough to live in a place where you're allowed to go to the cinema.
I would just like to say there is one movie of Lena Headey's that we both like, and that was Dread.
I liked fighting with my family, but not because she was in it.
That's fair.
It is an aside. The fact she was in a film I like does not mean she's any good.
That's fair.
Someone's going to come back to me last week and go, well, actually, Travis, in episode 121, you said you liked this film. And,
like anyone knows that much lore of our show.
There's probably a Wikipedia out there about shit, wait for look at the entry for Smells Like an Oily Rag. We haven't heard that one for a while.
Ooh, yeah. But people should go out and make a Wikipedia for Armchair producers.
Yeah, I don't think we get a Wikipedia page for that because I don't know we're notable enough, but we could try.
Hey, we are quality white noise.
That's going to go on a T-shirt. The show God couldn't cancel, and quality white noise. There you go.
Although quality white noise does just still sound racist.
White noise is a thing, though, so I think it's okay.
Yeah, but I don't know if anyone would want to walk around with quality white noise written on their T-shirt.
Maybe. White noise is it's like like you use white bread for a toast sandwich. I mean, I think it's okay to use the word white as descriptive word. That's not necessarily a racist thing.
That's fair. That's fair.
Can you tell us we're wrong, people?
Yes.
If you disagree.
All right. Now, did you want to talk about Wild Tales, or should we save that? Because I don't want to.
I'm gonna go. I'm on a roll, I should say, because I've got my mouth is still just being a bitch. But but I will try and cover Wild Tales quickly for people. And I think you had a manga or something you wanted to talk about potentially.
Yes.
Down in Japanese.
Yes.
Wild Tales is a 2014 Argentinian Spanish co-production, I believe. The original title is Relatos Salvajes. And again, I'm going to get pulled up by people who know Spanish a lot better than me about how I pronounce Relatos Salvajes probably incorrectly. But anyway, 6 short stories that explore the extremities of human behavior involving people in distress.
Okay.
This is a most unusually sort of structured film. It is, as I said, Argentinian. Probably in terms of stars, you're not going to know many of them. It is produced by Pedro Almodovar. If you are any kind of cinema fan, you probably know who Pedro is. He is a Spanish filmmaker, big fan of Antonio Banderas. And The Skin I Live In, Talk to Her.
That's where I know it. Yeah,
he's a very, very, very all about my mother. A very, very well-known filmmaker, European filmmaker. I don't think he's actually ever worked in Hollywood. Mostly does Spanish language work, I believe. But kind of a big name in terms of stars. You're not going to know any unless you are a regular listener to the show, and you will be familiar with my growing obsession with Ricardo Darín, who was in, of course, a couple of the movies, Heroic Fool. Or was it Love? Heroic. I remember
Heroic Fools.
I can't remember the name. It was a couple of the films we've seen lately, and of course, Nine Queens, which was remade in the US as Criminal. He was in the original Argentinian film. Ricardo Darín, the Argentinian George Clooney. Heroic Losers was the film I was thinking of, by the way. And so is it the unusual structure of a film is that sort of hints at there. These six short films smooshed into one.
Okay.
And you do not see, and they are completely unrelated, by the way. This is not like, Four Rooms or anything like any of those sort of 90s films, like where they tried to connect them together, with some sort of, connecting device, like Tim Roth's, bellhop in that film. They are completely separate stories.
Okay.
And I can't remember that ever happening. Well, not very often. I mean, the only one I can think of is really the Twilight Zone movie, and that's a very long time ago now. And don't mention the war about that one. You don't know what happened during the production of that film. I Google it, and I've been listening to a lot of 83 Weeks, but with Eric Bischoff. I don't know if you ever listened to that podcast.
No,
I think you'd enjoy it. It's a wrestling podcast, but Eric is fond of saying Google the internet, and so I'm probably gonna let that one out because I think to be Google the internet. But Google what happened in the Twilight Zone film. So the film is divided into 6 segments. Pasternak. While being on a plane, a model and a music critic realize they have a common acquaintance called Pasternak. Soon they discover that every passenger and crew member on board knows Pasternak. Is this a coincidence? 2, the rats. A waitress recognizes her client. It's a loan shark who caused a tragedy in her family. The cook suggests mixing rat poison with his food, but the waitress refuses. The stubborn cook, however, decides to proceed with her plan. 3, the strongest. 2 drivers on a lone highway have an argument with tragic consequences. 4, little bomb. A demolition engineer has his car towed by a truck for parking in the wrong place, and he has an argument with the employee of a towing company. This event destroys his private and professional life, and he plots revenge against the corrupt towing company and City Hall. 5, a proposal. A reckless son of a wealthy family has an overnight hit-and-run accident in which a pregnant woman gets killed. He wakes his parents up, and the father calls a lawyer. The parents propose to pay the groundkeeper to take the blame for the boy. Soon the father discovers that he is the victim of an extortion of his lawyer and the public prosecutor in charge of the investigation. What will be his decision? And 6, I think 6 is the strongest segment. Until death do us part. During the wedding party, the bride discovers that her newlywed husband has been cheating on her with one of her guests, and she decides to pay him back.
Okay.
This is all in one film that goes for 2 hours and 2 minutes. So it is packed. It's almost like, it actually did kind of remind me a little bit of the Twilight Zone in the sense that it had that anthology feel to it. And I found myself thinking a few times, they should go and get this guy. The writer is a guy named, the director, Damien Zifron, and German Servillo. Damien Zifron was the main creative force. They should forget about Jordan Peele and go and get this guy. Because each of these stories, while some were stronger than others, all of them were more disturbing, more fun, more entertaining, and much more watchable than anything the new season of Twilight Zone came up with. Whenever that came out, was it last year or the year before?
2019.
It wasn't good.
Yeah.
It's also kind of has a vague Black Mirror-y feel to it. Again, that anthology vibe to it, though it does not necessarily deal with technology as being the aggregating factor. The aggregating factor here is it sort of notes is that people in distress or in extreme situations and how they react in those situations and how reacting the way they do can escalate that situation, shall we say, or take it in a direction that's unintended consequences. And sometimes where that situation ends up can be kind of beautiful in a way, or it can be deeply disturbing. But it's definitely worth watching the trip. Now, I loved this film. I watched this with Michelle on a Saturday. Because yes, she's my translator. Give you context sometimes about what's going on in the Argentinian films and go, what the fuck is that? But it's actually not just me saying it because I'm dating someone who's from Argentina. This is actually in the IMDb top 250. This is number 182 in the IMDb top 50. It was nominated for an Oscar, I think, for Best Foreign Language Film in 2015. It has an 8.1, a 77 Metascore. Unfortunately, finding a copy with English subtitles without buying a shiny plastic disc was an uphill battle.
That perpetual problem that we have.
So I think it's available to stream potentially on your Primes and your bloody Amazons, and I think maybe it's available to rent a few places. But I don't want to spoil any more of the stories and what that synopsis gave away, other than to say that like they're even within a segment that may only go for 25 minutes, half an hour. There can be plenty of twists and turns that keep you guessing and keep you completely on the edge of your seat about what's going to happen next.
Okay.
It's not all serious. It can be funny as well at the same time. It can be both at the same time, which is really hard to do. So you can be funny and serious and tense all within a space of 30 seconds. And I think it's an absolute masterwork. And I mean, again, it's not something I don't think this is one of those films you're gonna see remade in the West because we don't do anthology films anymore. Very, very rare to see that, and you know, it was really, really fun. The director has gone on to be doing some stuff in Hollywood. His next film is a Hollywood production starring Shailene Woodley and Ben Mendelsohn. I haven't seen it, obviously, but I am going to predict, using my incredible psychic powers, yes, if the spirit is talking to me, Ben Mendelsohn's going to be the bad guy. You heard it here first.
I think that's a crazy thought.
Crazy. It's called Misanthrope, and he wrote it. So cool. I am excited about that because I think this guy can flat out. He's a really, really interesting director too. Because the story behind this film is he wrote the script in his bath, and he wrote it this way because he had all these ideas he wanted to turn into films, but he didn't think he could ever get turned into films. So he smushed them all together and got it turned into a film. So what a great story that is.
I like that. He MacGyvered a movie.
Pretty much. And like I can't recommend it strongly enough. If you have access to it on a streaming service, if you can rent it. Look, I know it's in Spanish. If you don't like subtitles, but I think it's worth doing all the reading.
In other words, get cultured.
Yeah, this is. I would hesitate to call this a cultured film because we're dealing with some pretty base situations here.
I'm just referring to learning another language.
Well, you are doing that currently, so I can't criticize people who I certainly didn't have any leg to stand on that front. Though I did once try to learn Russian, and all I learned how to say was "I am not a Russian girl," which is technically true. Do you give me some funny looks?
Why was that the phrase that you learned?
See, I didn't mean to learn that phrase. Russian is one of those languages that uses gendered nouns.
Yes,
we don't do in Australia. Obviously, if someone were to say "I'm not Russian," they would say "I am not Russian," right? Or "I'm not American." And given I went there in 2003, the Americans had just invaded Iraq. You know, they weren't really top of the pops in that neck of the woods, or any neck of the woods for that matter, apart from America. So I felt like, plus also, as a kind of country, when you're visiting, you probably don't want to be mistaken for an American, because if you're an American, you got money and you're worth robbing. They probably wouldn't think twice about it if they knew an American, but I thought they might think twice about it if they knew I was an Australian. So my first thing I wanted to learn was I'm not American. Just because I'm white and I speak English does not make me an American. But because I use a gendered noun, now they put the A at the end. So the Americana, I think it was like basically the word for American I was using was the female version of the word. Unbeknownst to me.
Fair enough.
There's a completely unnecessary story that no one wanted to hear.
I did. I asked and I got my reward. All right. Well, I'm just going to talk a little bit about Rurouni Keshin, the beginning. It's a live action adaptation of a manga, and there are actually like five of these live action movies, and this is the last one, but it's the prequel, so it happens before everything else. So I'm already confused, and so should everyone else be. But it's in the year 1864. Samurai Kenshin was known as the Batosai, a deadly assassin whose fierce swordsmanship has killed over 100 men in 1 year. When he saves a young woman, Tome, from some thugs at an inn, the two slowly begin to an attraction that leads to marriage. This leads Kenshin to potentially give up his sword for the sake of love. However, those who are in support of the Shogugate will not let Kenshin off too easy. The story of how Kenshin receives his trademark star-shaped scar is revealed in this prequel, which also serves as the final installment of the live-action franchise adaptation of the manga and anime. So there's a lot of baggage going into this, and unfortunately, whilst the final and the prequel movies are available on Netflix, the other ones are not. So, and it's not exactly the easiest one to get because you have to either rent them from Apple or have a premium subscription to Funimation, and those are services that I'm just not going to spend money on when I'm dipping my toe in. But what I will say about this movie is it's really beautifully filmed. The director is Keisha Otomo, who probably don't know any of their work. Seems to have been the director of note for this whole series. And it doesn't look like anything else has kind of particularly broken it through to the West, just looking at his back catalogue. The actors in it, guy who plays the main character does not seem to be listed. That's weird. You'd think that the main character is the first person on the listing, but
well, that's just exactly what you'd expect them to do.
Yeah, but no. So I won't talk about him right now. The lovely lady who plays the love attraction Tome is Kasumi Amimura, and I feel like I've seen her in stuff. There was a Japanese movie, Flying Colors, from 2015 that she was in, so that's probably where I recognize her from. But again, this definitely seems to be a homegrown movie of all Japanese talent that doesn't seem to have really expanded beyond the Japanese borders at this stage. But I will say that the performances are actually really good, and the action sequences are really good. It plays that it feels like there's two schools of samurai movie. Ones that are kind of like in the vein of Zatoichi, where they are sort of like absolutely historically accurate to the fighting style of the samurai, and it's all about kind of that one slice, that one perfect hit to take down your opponent, rather than the shing, ching, 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 and all that stuff, because that would actually blunt a samurai sword and it would be useless anyway. So it was all about that one strike, versus the much more kind of westernized attitude and manga style of sword fighting and samurai representation, where it is a lot more of those kind of quick moves and slides in and those undefeatable positions and maneuvers and things like that. It balances nicely between that. There's subtle examples of it where Kenshin is informed that there's going to be a raid on the people that he works for, is based by the police, and he just starts kind of, hello Archimedes.
At last.
Oh, he's been there for a while, but
g'day Archimedes, our longtime co-host
and legal representation of the show. But yeah, Kenshin starts running down these streets, and it's very traditional. So like everything is period perfect, or at least from a layman's point of view, everything looks, accurate. The costumes are beautiful. The design of sort of like top knots and the pulled back, purposely shaved foreheads and things like that. And he starts running, but then he does a quick turn to the right, and he does this anime style sort of like slide, 3-point turn slide, and it just looks really fucking cool. But it still fits with the more kind of historically accurate representation of the world that they're in. And the fight sequences are really good. They're bloody. There's a lot of blood being thrown around. But again, it's skirting line. It's definitely not the way that a samurai, based on the history of how a samurai would operate, how they would operate. It is the manga and anime representation of that and going more bombastic, but it still airs on this side of it's still believable. The opening fight sequence in particular, Keshin has been bound, his hands behind him, and he's on his knees, and he managed to fights his way free, and everything that he does, kind of in the opposite of what you were saying about Gunpowder Milkshake, every hit, every movement feels real and raw and tough, but it looks so stylishly beautiful. It's really a joy to behold. The story itself, it's an origin story, so that I feel like origin stories always have this kind of feel to them of inescapable destiny, which makes sense on a narrative standpoint. But even me coming into this is my first experience with the franchise. I still kind of feel like, yeah, I know how everything's going to be. I know that that person's going to betray them. I know that that's going to happen. And it's not just my weird superpower. It just
they are very samey, right? They can be a little bit similar. They can be very tropey.
Yeah, and the movie kind of telegraphs a lot of the revelations far too early, rather than there's no sense of mystery to any of the roles as they are laid out. But if you like better quality live action adaptations of manga and anime, and they aren't very common, those live action, for some reason, those live action ones never quite pull it together as much as the manga and anime. Don't moan. Stop it. I'll take you out in a bit. He's just sitting there just going, ready to howl.
He's a demanding legal representative.
He is. Look at him. Butter wouldn't melt in his mouth, but the thing is, it would, ladies and gentlemen. He ate an entire tub of it when he was a kid and threw up bright yellow.
I do recall that happening, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember it was the first time or the last time he stole a bunch of food that wasn't for him.
He did that earlier this week. He ate a week's worth of treats in one afternoon.
Why wouldn't he? And, he is a highly priced legal representative of the canine variety. He
The thing is, he got the cat to do the actual burglary because his treats were in a box on the table, and the cat knocked them out, and then he just gorged himself, and the cat just looked. What?
Yeah, the old "I didn't do it. You saw me. You can't prove anything" approach.
Mm-hmm. Stop showing me your hillbilly tooth.
I feel like maybe we reached the zenith of our conversation about live action manga conversions, considering we're now talking about the dog and him stealing treats, which is a fairly standard thing for dogs to do.
That's true. But I do recommend it overall. It's, if you want to experiment with a very beautiful, good action orientated, if predictable storyline Japanese movie, then go for it. The English dub is pretty good, but the subtitles are better, and the Japanese audio is just feels more organic, and it's more enjoyable to take that in from my point of view.
I can't do it. I can't watch the dubs because their mouth doesn't match what they're saying, and I can tell. And there's a slight, even the really good ones, there's a slight delay say what they're saying in their mouth, and you're like, no, I'm sorry, it completely breaks the immersion for me.
It's fine, and I have had to switch to listening to a lot of English dubs just because otherwise I find that I'm forgetting a lot of the Vietnamese that I'm learning. It just kind of pushes one language out. I can only hold 2 languages in my brain at once.
That's racist.
No, that's just me showing how inept my brain is.
I think it's easy to do. I remember when I was learning Russian, the Cyrillic, Russian Cyrillic looks fairly similar. If you quick look, looks quite similar to Greek because they use Cyrillic as well. So sometimes I'd find myself reading Greek, thinking, "Why can't I read this?" You don't speak Greek.
You don't even speak Pig Latin, damn it.
Do not. I speak English and bad English, and that's it.
You speak English, bad English, Australian, Canadian, American.
Canadian is just the same. It's just the same as Australian, but you put "a" at the end, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it's another language.
I'm from Canada, and they think I'm slow, eh? That's racist.
Much like, don't make me run. I'm full of chocolate.
Oh dear! How did the Simpsons ever? Wouldn't get away with it today. I mean, obviously you can't. They don't have Kazarian doing Apu anymore because that's racist. So, it was a different time. Damn it.
Yep, it was a different time. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap up a little early today. But honestly, are you missing much? Really?
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 I'd just like to thank our regular listener, for one listener we have, Cara Kitty, who reached out last week and explained to me that creme brulee French toast apparently exists, and I had not been informed of this before now. That's an oversight and a half. We should whack our Instagram up on the Facebook page or something because very talented artist. It's very exciting to have other artists of note following and listening into our little podcast.
Yeah. But thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This has been episode 123 of Armchair Producers. We talked about our chain movie of the week, Code 46. Travis is spoiling me rotten and chastising me in the same turn. We're following on chain movie with her, and he's going to pick a punishment movie for me for changing the chain movie, which I guess is fair. I'm so willing to take punishments. This is why I'm the only thing I identify as an Englishman, because I'm apologizing all the time, and I identify as Canadian, so I'm never going to not apologize. Sorry about that.
I did notice actually this week that I found a way to link back from Code 46 to Bright Young Things. The last time you had to get punished, the Stephen Fry film.
Oh shit! Yeah.
I thought, now that'd be a nice little loop back. Remember, we gotta watch Bright Young Things again. Maybe you'll get a way through it this time.
I will make you watch Grease.
I've done that once. Thank you very much. No.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Grease 2 maybe would be the bigger threat right now.
I'm not willing to do that to myself. Anyway, we talked about episode 1 and 2 of What If, Marvel's new show. Then Travis talked about Gunpowder Milkshake and Wild Tales, whilst I talked about Rurouni, Keshin, The Beginning. And that was our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining. Please remember to like, share, subscribe us on all the channels. Twitch.tv/The Fried Brain, YouTube.com/Armchair Producers, Facebook.com/Fried Brain Productions. We're all over those things, and we're on Twitter as well at The Fried Brain, at Evil Trav. We'd love to hear from you if you have recommendations for movies or any games that you want us to play or anything like that, because I now have the streaming capabilities. I just don't have very good internet. So, on that note, thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.